Tonight on Calgary 7 News, spring storm. Mother Nature plays a nasty trick on southern Alberta. A crack in the Abbotsford killer case. Police arrest a suspect. And shaking all over, the sights and sounds of the West Coast quake. Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. Mil Arcega is off this evening. Well, this never-ending winter has come back to haunt Calgary one more time. The snow and freezing rain are causing trouble for drivers and police. Police are at the scene right now of a serious accident in the southeast. A tractor trailer, a pickup truck and a car all collided at 52nd Street near Pagan Trail. The car actually ended up underneath the semi. Amazingly, no one was killed, but 2 drivers were injured. Police say alcohol was a factor. They're doing blood tests on 2 of the 3 drivers and expect to lay charges. Well, we're supposed to be well into spring, but tonight a heavy snowfall warning is still in effect west of the city. And as Paul Custer reports, Calgarians have had enough of the winter of '96.
It's a little wetter than what we had in winter. You can hardly notice the difference from today's storm compared to the stuff we got only a few short months ago. But the result is the same. How bad is it right here in this spot?
Real slippery. We called for a sanding truck. No sanding trucks available for at least half an hour. So we're trying to slow people down a bit, but it doesn't seem to be working.
The weather has taken everyone by surprise, especially motorists. The thick, wet snow has turned a lot of our streets, especially here on 14th Street Northwest, where it's really steep, into hydroplaning nightmares.
If you get 3 nice days, Calgarians forget how to drive in cold weather.
What do you recommend for, especially for stuff like this? Just stay off the roads?
Slow down. When you see police cars with their lights on and flares out, go half of the speed limit or a third of the speed limit. Don't go 5 kilometers below and think that you're driving safely.
Earlier in the day, the foothills were hit hard, as were the mountains.
Skiing here is phenomenal skiing today. May 3rd, it's kicking too much butt today.
It's very light, it's almost waist deep. It's amazing. It's better than heli skiing.
Oh, they're great today. We were over in the Goat's Eye and it's beautiful powder.
Okay, it may be good for skiers, but those bound in the city say enough's enough.
When I arrived here at the shopping center, it wasn't snowing about 2 hours ago.
So now that you stepped out here?
It was miserable.
How does that make you feel? Does that make you feel miserable too?
Sort of, yes, it does.
Go a little slower. I grew up in Montreal, so I know how to drive in the snow. It's different conditions.
Police say that the surprise snowfall caused dozens of accidents at the peak of the storm. Paul Custer, Calgary 7 News.
Well, Jimmy Hughes joins us now to tell us about this spring storm.
Interestingly, that lady that grew up in Montreal knows all about it because Montreal is the major center in North America that gets the most snowfall. But we don't expect it this time of year, and there are areas that are getting more snow than we are. That is south of Calgary in that Lethbridge region. For us, tonight, our overnight low at about -1, but that snow continues, and if we're looking at radar and we see another band of it's moving in for us. So if you think you've seen the worst this evening, this may not be the case. We've got more moving in. Personally, I would advise against travel. That's not an official advisory from the RCMP or anything. I would advise against travel tonight. We get into Sunday. Tomorrow's high at about 6 to 8 degrees with snow in the afternoon and showers, and the same type of instability through Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. We start to see a little sunshine, but we've had so much of this stuff around. We'll have the morning fog and the relative humidity and things like that, so there's no really relief on the immediate horizon, but I'll give you some more details later on.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Jimmy.
You bet.
Well, in other news tonight, the medical examiner has identified human remains found south of the city, and police are treating the case as a suspicious death. On Tuesday night, a 12-year-old boy playing in this field south of Highway 22X discovered a human skull. Police searched the area on foot and by air, finding bones scattered over a wide area. They now say the bones are the remains of 28-year-old Michael Anthony Giles. He was reported missing almost a year ago after his truck was found abandoned in Marlborough. Until this week, police had no leads in the case. Tonight, it looks like there's finally a break in the terrifying case of the Abbotsford killer. Police in BC's Lower Mainland will lay charges tomorrow in the murder of 16-year-old Tanya Smith. She was killed last October, and ever since, the killer has taunted police and terrorized the entire community. As Linda Steele reports, the suspect is an Abbotsford man.
16-year-old Tanya Smith last October. The killer has been taunting police ever since, defacing the teenager's gravestone by tossing it on the hood of a truck at a Vancouver radio station. He's also made several threatening phone calls to police, warning he would strike again.
Beside a walkway that runs north-south on a grassy knoll behind trees. Okay, sir, where are you getting this from? I'm the killer.
The dead girl's mother made an emotional plea earlier this week, asking anyone with information to come forward.
I beg you, if you suspect or know the person that committed this crime, please call. You may love this person and may not know what to do, but for the safety of all our children, please get him the help that he desperately needs.
And tonight we learned that police have a suspect in custody.
That's correct. After our press conference on Tuesday, we received over 100 tips, and in those 100 tips, the information was there to lead us to this person.
The suspect is a 34-year-old Abbotsford man. He's married and has 2 children. He's lived in this Abbotsford house for the last 2 months. Strangely, the suspect looks nothing like the composite drawings. Tonight, police confirm he was turned in by his own family.
Police will hold a news conference tomorrow morning to release more information on the suspect and the charges. The parole board has turned down a man who has been terrorizing a Calgary woman for years, and that means Kevin Tate will stay in prison for at least 1 more year. In an exclusive Calgary 7 report this winter, Rick Castiglione told you how the woman was stalked, beaten, and raped in Quebec, and then fled to Calgary to hide. Rick's story aired in most major cities in Canada, and as he reports tonight, the parole board has now decided that Tate should stay behind bars a little longer.
The horror never really goes away because you never really feel safe, and you know that one day they're coming out.
She has lived in fear for months, fear of the man who stalked her, twice abducted, beat, and raped her in 1989. This winter, she hired a private investigation firm in Calgary to protect her. Kevin Robert Tate was to be released from jail last week, but it has now been delayed for at least a year.
I was relieved.
Why?
Because it affords me the time to assume a new identity, to take the measures that I have to take to ensure my safety.
His release delayed, Tate will remain in Cowansville Prison in Quebec until April of 1997 at least. It gives Julie some breathing room.
It gives me the time that I require to become comfortable with a new identity, to take the measures that I need to take to ensure my safety.
Julie says there is no doubt in her mind that Tate will come looking for her, and she worries about other women who cross his path. Another woman was abducted and raped by him before he finally went to jail. It was at his trial that he found out where Julie had moved to. She believes he will come for her.
You're still living in fear of this guy?
Yes.
What do you think he'd do if he got out and came to Calgary looking for you?
He'd murder me.
She came to Calgary to disappear, to blend in with the crowd, to start a new life. She'd like to stay in this city, but she can't. She now has 12 months to change her identity, run, and once again, hide from a man who has stalked her for the last decade. Rick Castiglione, Calgary 7 News.
Julie says Canada's stalking law is useless to her. She says she would be dead before her complaint was handled, and that's why she's trying to disappear again. The warden for Edmonton's federal prison for women says she won't resign despite an embarrassing string of breakouts. 7 inmates escaped from the jail in just under 3 weeks, but warden Jan Fox says she's not to blame. Fox says she realized there was a problem with the prison's low-key approach to security, but she also says they were forced to accept more high-risk inmates than they wanted. Corrections Canada has now moved most of the inmates to other facilities while it tightens security. Scouts Canada is bringing in a new policy to protect its children and the organization from sexual abuse. A few weeks ago, the courts convicted a former Scout leader of sexually assaulting an Ottawa boy. As Louis Kudus reports, now anyone who volunteers to be a Scout leader will have to go through a mandatory police check.
Alberta's 8,000 Scout volunteers have had to go through a community reference check to work with Boy Scouts. But within a year, all volunteers will have to go through a much more rigorous cross-checking system, including one done by the RCMP.
A police record check, which will indicate whether there are any offenses on their record. And they will also receive from Alberta Social Services a review of their files at Alberta Social Services to see if there's anything on their files around child abuse relating to that individual.
While the Scouts are getting the new system underway to weed out child predators, organizations like the Girl Guides say they're also considering much more thorough checks on volunteers, depending on the cost.
It's something that we would be willing to do as long as it didn't make it more expensive for our girls to be members.
These are the Calgary offices of Big Sisters and Big Brothers. This is a volunteer organization that provides companionship to young people. They've not only started a cross-checking system here, but it applies to their volunteers, staff members, and their board members. Big Sisters and Big Brothers now access child welfare records and the RCMP to make sure volunteers have no history of child abuse. Jim Campbell says while no method is absolutely foolproof, it does send a strong message to would-be predators.
All we can do is let somebody who has had a tendency that way know that we will be looking for that, looking for signs and red flags, and being vigilant.
The police checks won't include information about current investigations or charges laid against someone who is found not guilty of molestation. But the Boy Scouts say the new system will put up much more stringent barriers against those who would abuse the young. Louis Kudis, Calgary 7 News.
And these guidelines will affect a lot of people. There are about 8,000 Boy Scout volunteers in Alberta alone. And if the Girl Guide movement adopts the same rules, another 8,000 volunteers would go through the same screening process. Well, today marks the end of an era for some Alberta soldiers. These runners arrived at CFB Calgary this afternoon, 30 hours after leaving the Suffield base near Medicine Hat. The soldiers are members of the 743rd Communications Squadron, which is disbanding after 31 years. It's part of a plan to centralize military operations in Edmonton. This run raised almost $1,500 for the Canadian Cancer Society. Great job in that cool weather. And we've already heard from Jimmy this evening with our first look at the weather forecast. So now it's time for Mike Lounsborough and tonight's Sports Fix. Mike?
Yeah, we'll get old Hughes and his pathetic forecast out of the way, and let's get on to the glory, and that, of course, being the sportscaster here at Calgary 7. Roll the video. Shut up, Hughes. Roll the videotape. We start off rushing Canada today. Wow, look at this one. Shootout. Berezin beats Joseph. Ferraro had to score. Beats Trefilov. Scores. Yeah. So Canada is alive and well. Yeah, the guy's pretty pumped. Now, second round, it's Perot again from Los Angeles. Scores. Goes up high. Canada wins, and they advance to the gold medal game, and they will take on the Czechs. Great action for the guys from Canada. Good to see. All right, now to the NHL playoffs tonight. Pens and New York Rangers. Power play. Lemieux goes to Jaromir Jagr, and look what he does. He pulls the trigger. 1-zip for the boys from the Igloo. Now with the score 3-2 for New York, here's what takes place. You'll see Murray race in. He goes to Roche. He goes to the backhand, scores a beauty right there in the third period, and that would tie the game at 3. And Pittsburgh would take that momentum and use it to their advantage. 7:20 left in the clock. Jagr, a nice move, sets up his pal. Mario, boy, what a dynamic team those two are. 4-3, Pittsburgh draws first blood against the Rangers. Blues and Wings, Barron hits Konstantinov. Wow. Steamrolled him. Now 2-0 Wings. Corson goes to Hull. Brett Hull lets the shot go. Yeah, nice goal right there. That has tied the proceedings up at a pair of goals apiece. Now the Detroit Red Wings have to fight back and win this one. 3-1 for the Wings. Kozlov goes to Fedorov, trailing the play. Oh, is that a thing of beauty? 3-2 Detroit. I said this one would be over in 4. They took the first step tonight, but it was a pretty close game. Now let's go to basketball. Suns and Spurs. The Admiral, David Robinson, with the slam. Dennis Rodman says this guy freezes every time they're playing a big game, but he looked pretty good. Person misses the three-pointer, gets it back, and hey, 2 tries for a buck. 116-98, Spurs win the series 3-1. The Suns are done.